Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. I'm Elliot, this is Everything Elliot, and today we're gonna go over everything you need to know about sharpening your chainsaw. Now on my bench, right beside me, I have my Holzfforma 372 XP. It's got a 28-inch bar on it, and it's probably a little bit bigger than the saw you're gonna be sharpening. I would expect anybody with a saw this big to know how to sharpen their own chain, but if you don't know how to sharpen your own chain, don't be afraid. It's something you can easily do at home, and I'm gonna show you how. Now there are a couple different ways to sharpen your chainsaw chain. I prefer to use a file. The file kit I use is all kept in this bag right here. I don't know who it's made by, but it's got all the files on nice handles, the 3 main sizes that you need, and then it comes with a flat file as well. I don't like the small one, so I threw a bigger one in here. I also threw a paint pen in here that you'll need, and comes with this right here. I'll show you what that is in a minute. 3 files, all 3 of them are different sizes. You need to find out which size is appropriate for you. This is 3/16, this one is 5/32, and this one is 7/32. Now if you know what size your chain is, then you should know what file to grab. But if you don't know what size your chain is, I'll show you how to figure that out. So on the side of your chainsaw, there's gonna be 2 nuts. They might be bigger than this, they might be smaller than this, but you will have 2 nuts holding this cover on. You're gonna wanna grab your scrunch. If you don't have a scrunch, just grab a socket wrench and take these off. This part up here is called your brake, and some smaller saws will actually have the brake integrated in this cover. If your brake is integrated into this cover, make sure your brake is released before you try to take this cover off, because you're gonna have a hard time, A, getting it off, and B, getting it back on. So disengage the brake and you'll be able to pull the cover off. This saw does not have the brake on the cover, so we didn't have to worry about that. While you're in here, this is gonna be a good time to make sure everything is nice and clean. Clean all the sawdust out of here, out of your cover and such. And you're gonna notice on this bar there's gonna be some writing. Your writing might not be printed on the bar, it might actually be stamped into the bar, into the metal, but you're going to want to take a look at that writing. So if you take a close look at this writing, you can see the chain width is 0.058 or 1.5 mil, and the chain pitch is 3/8 by 92. That 92 is drive links. So 3/8, and there's 92 drive links. Drive links are just the individual chain with little teeth on it. So we need to take that information and then we need to transfer that information to our file. Now the file size is going to be different based on the chain width and the drive link length. The easiest thing to do is go right to Google. You want to type in file size for 058 by 3/8 chain, and Google should tell you. On this specific chain, I know that I like to run a 3/16 file on it. Now, if you can't find the information that you want on Google, there is another way to tell, and I'll show you that. So the file size I'm about to show you is too small for this chain. If you take that file and you put it in this groove that's in here from the factory, you can see that there's a lot of play in it. So that's no good. You want to make sure that file fills up that whole gullet right there. If you grab a file that's too big and you put it in there, you're like, oh, that looks like it fits. But what is actually going to happen is you're going to start digging down into this chain down here, and you're going to take off more material off the top than you need to. When you grab the correct size file, you're going to notice that it fits right in there perfectly. You're not going to be taking a ton of material off the top, and you're not going to be digging into this bottom chain down here. It'll fit in there like it belongs. So once you've decided what size file you need to put your cover back on and put it in a bench vise. If you don't have a bench vise, I would recommend you get one. If you don't want to buy a bench vise, they make what's called a stump vise. And if you have like a stump laying around, you can just hammer the stump vise into the stump and do your chainsaw sharpening on that. I have a bench vise behind me. That is what I'm going to use. So when you're putting your saw in the vise, you just want to make sure it's close to the body of the saw, and you just want to grab that bar and just tighten it down there. good and tight. You won't hurt the bar at all. So when you're putting this in the vise, it's very important to know that your saw needs to be parallel with the ground, needs to be level. You can do this by eye, or if you really want to get serious, you can throw a level on top of it. So once you've got your saw in the vise, you need to decide where you're going to start. That's why I take my paint pen and I just mark a tooth. And that way when you go all the way around, you know that you've started here and you don't sharpen it twice. So the next thing you need to do is actually file the saw. And if you look on the top of your tooth, there's a little line on each tooth. You see that little line there? Those are wear marks. Once you sharpen the tooth down to that wear mark, this chain is done. But what this also provides for you is a nice angle to follow. This should follow the stock angle from the factory, and that's the line that you want to follow when you're sharpening. So if you see that line there, that wear guide, that is the line you're going to want to line up on your file when you're sharpening to make sure you're following the same angle with every stroke of the file. So now it's time to file, right? You got your starting point right here. You know what angle you're going to go at, and it's also very important that you keep this file parallel to the ground as well. You know this is parallel to the ground, obviously this way, and now you want to keep your file parallel to the ground as well. Take that file, and I like to push up and back. So you don't want to push down because you don't want to grind into the drive links. You want to push up and back, and a nice easy stroke starting all the way at the start of the file all the way to the end. Count your strokes. 2, 3. I like to put my arm over the saw. That way you have a guide to hang on to. And the nice thing about this file is it's got actually thumbs here. So when you're leaning this over, you can actually follow that guideline. So 3 strokes, grab it with your file, move it down, go on to the next one. Once you do one side, you need to flip the saw around. I guess you can try to do it backwards, but I find that to be very difficult. What I like to do is I actually take the saw out of the vise, flip it so the bar is out this way. That way I can use the same hands and do the other side. So once you've got everything filed, you can see a nice crisp edge right there. Should look nice and clean for you. It's time to hit the rakers. These little things are called rakers, and that is actually the depth control for the cutting head. If your raker is too high, these can be as sharp as they want to be. They're actually not going to hit wood and you're not going to cut anything. So every time you sharpen your tooth, you want to hit the rakers a little bit. Now with the kit came this little tool, but after you use it for a while, you can see how it wears down to just about anything. And if you do have this tool, this is how it works. You put the tooth on either side, one here and one there, and your raker will show up in the middle. There's the raker right there, and you just run a file over the top. It'll take off the raker. If you don't have this tool and you just have a flat file, an easy way to do it with a flat file is you just run it over the tooth. You see how that raker is lower than the cutting teeth? Got the file on this cutting tooth and this cutting tooth, and the raker we're looking at is this one right here. So you can see some light through there. That's good. That means that the tooth is going to be grabbing wood, and that raker does not need to go down. If your file pivots on that raker, and it's not hitting the teeth, you need to file that raker down. So the way that I like to file my rakers, if you do need to take them down, is I like to put my thumb on top of the tooth so you don't accidentally hit the tooth with your flat file. You know, if you hit your tooth with a flat file, you're gonna dull it. So I run my thumb on top of the tooth, and then I take my flat file and run the flat file parallel to the ground right across the top of that raker. Just like that. If you put your thumb there, you're not gonna hit that tooth. You won't have any issues. And the final step of sharpening the chain is to check the chain tightness. That's that right there, how far the chain comes off of the bar. I'm gonna show you how to do that real quick on my saw, just so you guys know. And it's also good to know this, even if you're not sharpening your chain and it is loose, you wanna make sure it's nice and tight. So once you've got your saw on the workbench and you can see the chain dangling like this, you obviously know it's too loose. If it's the opposite, and the chain is so tight that you can't even pull it down and see the bottom of that drive link, that means it's too tight. Now this is going to vary from person to person, how loose or tight they want to tighten their chain. But the important part is you want to grab that bar and lift that bar up. See how it just loosened up there? That is where your chain is going to ride. Your bar is going to sit in the upward position. So you want to hold it upward and then tighten in the upward position. The tightener on this specific saw is back here. Some are up front, you know, in the front side of the bar. Some are up front here. But once you're holding that bar up, check that tightness. And I like it so you can pull it down and see the end of the drive links. While holding the bar up, you want to tighten these nuts back down. And once they're tight again, you can obviously let go of the bar and check your tightness again. Same tightness. Everything moves freely. And one last thing, while we're into this and discussing everything, if you have a roller bearing on the end of your bar, this is a good time to grease it. If you have a roller bearing, you should see some rivets right here, and right next to one of the rivets, you're going to see a hole. There's a hole right there for mine. You grab your little grease gun with a needle point, put the needle point in there, and throw some grease in it while spinning this around. I literally just greased mine off camera, not thinking that I should do it in front of you guys, but mine's greased, so do that while you're here. That should be everything you need to know about sharpening your chainsaw. You don't sharpen your chainsaw, you sharpen your chainsaw chain. Yeah, that's everything you need to know about sharpening your chainsaw chain. I hope you guys learned something. I hope this helps you to try it at home, do it yourself. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people with concerns. Leave a comment below. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't care. I can take constructive criticism. Tell me down below how I did this wrong. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.